Dana ONeil is a senior writer at ESPN, one of the more respected college basketball writers in the industry. She spent a season, a journey, if you will, with the Villanova basketball team. She writes the book Longshots, Wright, Villanova, and college basketball's most unlikely champion. And she joins us now with a look at that team and the Villanova program here on 97.3 ESPN. Dana, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we. One of the things I'm interested to know about why you wrote the book was, did you envision a possibility of a special season when you got, the idea to start this book? Was that something that you said, hey, this Nova team, there's something about them, they might be special, that I should really get in there from day one?
I wish I could say I was that smart, because if I was, I would have been in Vegas with my brain. Let me tell you. No, I had no clue. And frankly, I was standing on the court after Villanova won the national championship when my friend grabbed my arm and said, you know this team better than anybody. You really ought to write a book. And I was like, well, I got to write a game story right now. I can't even get my wits about me for that. But when I kind of cleared my head, I spent 8 years at the Philadelphia Daily News covering Villanova from the day Wright got hired. When I moved over to ESPN, I didn't stop covering Villanova because they remained very relevant. So I had kind of lived the arc of Wright's career and how he built that program into a national champion. I thought, you know what? I can write a book about this team. I do know it. So I did, for lack of a more dramatic way to say it. I set about writing a book this summer.
Well, where do you think it started in terms of the possibility for them to be a long shot champion?
Well, I think the seeds for this particular team were sown back after the Final Four run in 2009. After that year, Villanova got a big national reputation, and Wright brought in a bunch of good players, but they weren't sort of necessarily the kind of players he had coached previously. And they went down all the way down to the 13 and 19 rabbit hole. They kind of fell off the ledge a little bit. And he looked hard at the way he was coaching and what he was doing, spreading himself thin, recruiting different kinds of kids, and said, you know what, no mas, I'm not doing that anymore, and changed his entire approach. And Ryan Arcidiacono and Daniel Echefu were a direct response to that he just like, these are the kinds of kids I want to recruit. And I think, frankly, that's where this team came from. He wanted kids that were going to play together, where chemistry maybe outweighed even talent, and that's what that team won on.
Dana ONeil with us. The book is Longshots, Wright, Villanova, and college basketball's most unlikely champion. A authority no less than Jay Billis says every sports fan will love this book by Dana ONeil. She has as much in-depth knowledge of Villanova as anybody, and I know when I read her, I will learn something. Dana, I read the entire book, and what I learned is how close Ryan Arcidiacono came to being a Florida Gator. Maybe you could talk about that a little bit, and the night where he felt dissed by Wright, and then all of a sudden things changed.
Yeah, that's the crazy part of all, and that's how tenuous all of these championships really are when you dig a little deeper. So when Ryan was in high school, he went down to visit Villanova at their Midnight Madness kickoff party, and he had been recruited. His parents are both Villanova graduates, so that's really where he wanted to go. And they had them sitting around a room at a bunch of high tops at the practice facility, and Jay visited every table. Well, I have long called Wright Elvis, because when he walks in a room, everyone flocks to him. And it wasn't an intentional slight, but he never got to Ryan's table, and he just didn't get there. Ryan was young; he wasn't wasn't the class that they were after, and he just forgot to get there. And he left the arena that night, and his dad, who's a Villanova graduate, Joe, put his arm around him and said, son, it's okay. Villanova maybe isn't for us. We'll find someplace else. And then Billy Donovan starts showing up every day at Neshaminy High School before Ryan could get there, and showed this huge interest in Ryan to the point where he went to visit and said, I'm going to be a Gator. He comes home, walks in his living room, and declares that, and his sister starts sobbing because she's older and thinking, I'm never going to see my brother play again. And that's the only reason he kind of reconfigured everything and said, all right, let me at least give Villanova one more chance to not screw this up. fortunately, when he went down for his next visit, they didn't. And lo and behold, Mr. Villanova, as Jay Wright called him, is born.
Yeah, Ryan Wright, he's referred to himself sometimes
Right.
jokingly, too, like Jay's son or son from another mother or something like that. Dana O'Neill's with us, and I know another story that I liked, and you really do a great job, Dana, of getting it from the last play of the game, which everybody remembers, but each chapter starts sort of returning to the shot hasn't happened yet. The shot hasn't happened yet. And then goes into the background of the different characters that were involved in that play. And in the case of Daniel Ochefu, people saw on national TV him grab a mop, and they were laughing, and they thought it was funny. But you really tell a good tale that there's a lot more to that than just a guy trying to help the ball boy out.
Yeah, it's funny because I actually, when that happened live in front of me, I'm like, everybody else like, what is he doing? And then after the game, I asked him the question, like, well, what were you doing, Daniel? Why did you do that? And he explained, like, on the previous play when Marcus Page hit his crazy circus shot, Daniel flew out at the ball and tried to, get his hand in front of Marcus Page's face, and he kind of sprawled across the court and slid out of bounds, and he left a sweat streak behind him. And he knew the way that they were going to run the play, that at about that same vicinity, he was going to have to set the screen to spring Ryan Arcidiacono to get down the court. So he was worried that this kid, 12-year-old kid's doing his, little mop-up job super quick, wasn't going to do a good enough job, and went and got the mop. And it seemed really silly at the time, but frankly, that's, again, why this team won. It's like goofy little things like that, thinking ahead, recognizing the importance of everything in that play to make that play work. If that screen doesn't happen, right, Ryan doesn't peel off, Ryan doesn't flip the ball to Kris Jenkins, and I'm not talking to you right now. So it was hilarious. My favorite part, though, was I asked his mother, Daniel's mother, I said, what did you think of that? She said, well, I told Jay Wright I sent my son to make you a man, and he even became a great mopper. I mean, he now cleans the house, I think.
These are the kind of stories you can see in Long Shots. Jay Wright, Villanova, and college basketball's most unlikely champion. We're visiting with Dana O'Neil right now, and Kris Jenkins. The story behind the story with Kris Jenkins, and it sort of was touched on probably by you and others at the Final Four, but his relationship with the Britt family and the family of Nate Britt, there's a big chapter about that, and I'd like to let you discuss that a little bit too.
Yeah, it's one of those relationships that basketball breeds, and Kris Jenkins, actually, it started because he had an infant sister who was born ill, and she was kind of fighting for her life in a hospital outside of Maryland, and the Brits and the Jenkins families had run into each other on the AAU circuit, and Felicia Jenkins, Chris's mother, really liked the way Nate Britt's senior team carried itself, shook hands, really disciplined team, and it stuck with her. So she's in the hospital with her infant daughter. She reached out to Nate Sr. about keeping Kris busy, essentially. And so all of a sudden, Kris is hanging out more and more, and a day becomes an overnight, becomes a weekend. And after they moved back to South Carolina and his sister passed, Felicia was worried that, Kris was sort of kind of lost a little bit. And she called the Brits and said, listen, can he come and stay with you? And they ended up taking over full guardianship of him. So he had really two sets of parents. And they really gave him some discipline and structure at a time that he needed it. And when people came to recruit Nate Britt Jr., including North Carolina and Villanova, Kris was there. And he was a little overweight at the time, and not everybody was very interested. But Jay saw a player and potential in him, and basically made him a deal. Like, look, you got to get in shape to play with me, but if you make that deal, you could play with me. And Kris took the deal. And again, it's just weird little things like that, that just make a team come together.
Dana O'Neill's with us. Long Shots is the book for all college basketball fans, locally Villanova fans. I'd like to, because I was a Big East guy. I was West Virginia when they were in the Big East. They are now a product of what happened to the Big East. And you kind of write about in the book the effects of the Big East kind of changing. They're still there. They're one of the teams that is in this new Big East. But how did that affect the program?
I think it affected the perception of the program a lot, because when that old Big East was, heavens, I used to go to that Big East tournament every year and say it was better than the NCAA tournament. It was just a bloodbath. I loved to watch that tournament. And when it folded and a lot of the name brand programs who had massive reputations left, I think a lot of people questioned, all right, I get it as a business decision. These schools should band together and this makes sense, but how competitive can they be? They don't have football money. They don't have that marquee splash of the national programs anymore. They're small Catholic schools. How competitive can this product actually be? And I think it was a legitimate question, to ask. But when Villanova won the championship, Val Ackerman said to me, the commissioner of the Big East, this validated our league as much as it validated Villanova. It proved that, we've seen Butlers and things like that, VCUs get into the Final Four, but the Big East didn't want to be a little engine that could. It wanted to be a player on the national stage.
Right.
And this proved that it could be. And, I think we're seeing the outgrowth of that this year with Butler and Creighton and Xavier and Villanova are very good national programs. I mean, we don't have to wonder where they fit in anymore. They fit right with everybody else.
So you've been around this team for a while. As you said, you were with the Daily News, and obviously you kind of
Dana Pennant ONeil
back then, right?
We like that by
yes. Got rid of my father's name. He hates me still. And I'm just kidding.
And then nationally now with ESPN, what makes this program tick? What makes Jay Wright tick? There's been a lot of times when he's been speculated to go to the NBA or move on. So why still at Villanova? What makes him tick?
I think it's a lot of things, but I think what he really likes is the rhythm of Villanova. He had an opportunity to interview at least at Kentucky and turned it down. And I remember talking to him about it at the time. And his thing was, the beautiful thing about Philadelphia is Villanova is a big deal, and people are very supportive of the program, but they aren't the center of anyone's attention, at least until the Eagles are done. That's just the reality. And then as soon as their season's over, everyone's paying attention to what the Phillies are doing. And you can kind of exist in a little bit of anonymity. You can throw a baseball hat on and people will talk to you, but it's not like living in a fishbowl where you can't function. And I think he really likes that, and that's what he likes about Villanova. And now he's at the point where, look, he's got everything he needs, obviously, to win a national championship. Makes a good salary, has a nice practice facility, gets the players he wants. Why would you leave? Like, what could be better if this is the kind of situation that you want? What could be better? I think if you were ever to leave, it would be simply to taste the challenge of coaching in the NBA. Not that he thinks it would be a better job, but just to challenge himself. But there's no grass greener for him than Villanova in college basketball right now. And he also grew up in it. He grew up a Big Five fan in Bucks County. He went to games as a kid. He was a big Rollie Massimino fan. He was on Rollie's staff. So the place matters to him. There's a real connection there. And I think all that factors in.
Well, we don't want to give away the whole book. We want you to go out there and check it out.
I won't tell you how it ends. I won't tell you how the game ends.
But if you're a college basketball fan, specifically a Villanova fan, but Pete, you're a Temple grad and
I'm
you read it.
I'm a Temple guy, and I devoured the book, Dana. I thought it was excellent work by you. Good job by Pat to get you to write the book, too.
The book is called Longshots. Dana ONeil is the author. It's a great look into the Villanova program, a very improbable champion in today's college basketball world. But read it and find out more for yourself. Dana, thanks so much.
Anytime. Thank you for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.